All right, so today we're taking a deep dive into a career path that you might not think about every day.
We're talking about paper mill supervisors,
Okay.
and we've got some really cool sources to help us unpack
We've
this.
got the RoleCatcher guide that you sent over.
And then we've also got that Beat the Automated Recruiter article, which I think you'll find really fascinating.
Yeah, and it's interesting how these very specific sources about this one very particular job.
Can actually give us like these bigger picture trends that are affecting really like everyone,
Absolutely.
like whether it's automation or even just like how technology is changing, like the whole hiring game.
Yeah, like when you think about a paper mill,
What comes to mind? What's the first thing you picture?
huge, like noisy machines,
Yeah.
those gigantic rolls of paper. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not exactly like
Not the most glamorous image.
Yeah, it's not a glamorous job.
No, not really. And the RoleCatcher guide definitely, it doesn't like try to make it seem like it's something it's not.
They describe the environment as pretty demanding.
It's hot, it's humid. There's like the potential for exposure to chemicals.
Yeah, you're not sitting at a desk all day in your
No,
air conditioning.
no, not at all.
But this is actually interesting because this isn't just something that's happening in paper mills.
This is like a larger thing that we're seeing with a lot of skilled trades these days.
Totally. You're right. As manufacturing is becoming way more complex, relying on all this fancy technology.
These jobs, they're getting more demanding physically, but at the same time, we still need more skilled workers.
Exactly.
It's like this weird kind of paradox happening.
Right, because we keep hearing about how automation and robots are going to take over everything.
But the reality is it's a lot more complicated than that.
Way more nuanced, and the actual skills that people need to manage all this more complex stuff.
Those are changing too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and RoleCatcher, they actually go into this in the guide.
And it's interesting because they point out that it's not even really just about the technical side of things.
It's like you need leadership and communication skills too.
In fact, the number one skill that they listed was active listening.
Active listening. Seriously.
I know, right?
I would have thought it would have been like,
I don't know, some kind of really specific technical knowledge.
right, like knowing the exact recipe for different types of paper pulp or something.
That's right.
But it's not, it's actually kind of cool.
Because it shows that while, obviously you need the technical know-how.
A huge part of being a paper mill supervisor is about managing a team.
You got to be able to troubleshoot problems as they come up.
Right.
Make sure everybody's working safely.
Yeah.
And all of that requires really good communication skills.
And being a good listener, like actually hearing what your team is telling you.
Wow. So according to the guide, 57% of the job is active listening.
That's wild.
That's more than a lot of jobs that people would usually think of as communication heavy. Yeah.
And this brings up a really important point for everyone listening.
It doesn't matter what your field is.
The skills that employers really care about now.
Are the ones that robots can't do yet?
Exactly.
Things like problem solving.
Critical thinking,
Yeah.
communication.
These are the human skills that are becoming more and more valuable.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about how being a paper mill supervisor
Mhm.
is actually way more complex than it might seem at first.
But how do you actually get one of these jobs?
Right.
And this is where the Beat the Automated Recruiter article comes in.
Okay.
And it's kind of scary, to be honest with you.
Really?
It basically says that algorithms are now like the gatekeepers for a lot of job applications.
Oh, wow. So it's like this hidden force that's deciding who even gets a chance.
It's crazy.
So how can tools like RoleCatcher help us navigate this new world?
Where AI is basically making all the decisions
What RoleCatcher does is it actually analyzes job descriptions.
to figure out the exact skills that employers are looking for. And then it helps you tailor your resume and even practice your interview answers.
So that you can get past these algorithms.
It's like having a secret weapon.
Totally.
But it does make you think about, is this really fair?
That's a really good point, and it's something that we talk about a lot.
Because while these tools are designed to help people,
We can't ignore the fact that there could be bias baked into them.
because algorithms are only as good as the information they learn from, right?
Right.
And that information often reflects the same inequalities that we see in the real world.
So even if you have the skills,
The way you present them on your resume.
the language you use, all of that can affect whether the algorithm likes you or not,
Exactly. It's like this hidden layer of complexity that we have to be aware of.
because it highlights how important it is to understand these biases and to advocate for systems that are more fair for everyone.
And that's something that probably resonates with paper mill supervisors too.
Oh, for sure.
Like we were talking about the potential for bias in hiring.
That doesn't just go away once you have the job.
Absolutely not. Think about the history of a field like manufacturing, you know?
It's been around for a long time, and there have been a lot of challenges related to like diversity and inclusion.
Right.
So someone in a role like a paper mill supervisor, they might still face obstacles based on things like their gender or their background.
Even if they have the perfect resume.
It's a good reminder that technology can be a really powerful tool.
But it doesn't solve everything.
Right. It's not a magic solution.
Well, we still need to be mindful of the human side of things.
And work towards creating workplaces that are fair and inclusive for everyone.
I totally agree.
Okay, so we've talked about the challenges, but let's switch gears for a second.
And go back to something we mentioned earlier, the paper industry itself.
Yeah, what about it?
A lot of people might think, oh, that's a dying industry.
Right, like who uses paper anymore?
Exactly. But the RoleCatcher Guide actually says that the industry is growing.
Wait, really?
Yeah, growing.
Huh, I wouldn't have guessed that.
Me neither. So tell us what's going on there.
Well, it turns out while people might be using less paper for things like printing,
Other areas are booming.
like what? Give us an example.
Packaging materials, for one.
Packaging materials?
Yeah, think about all the online shopping people are doing.
Oh, that's right.
All those packages need cardboard boxes.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
I never even thought about the cardboard connection.
It's huge. And it's not just about the quantity either.
The RoleCatcher Guide talks about how sustainability is becoming a big deal in the paper industry.
Okay.
There's a lot of pressure to use recycled materials and to reduce their environmental impact.
So it's this really interesting mix of factors driving the growth.
Totally. You've got changing consumer habits, global trade environmental concerns. It's complex.
It's not just about paper anymore.
Not at all.
It's about understanding these bigger forces that are shaping the world.
Exactly. And that's something that's relevant to all of us.
Whether we're interested in working in a paper mill or not.
It's like that saying goes, everything's connected.
Right. And that actually brings us to another really interesting part of the RoleCatcher Guide.
The section on adjacent career guides.
Okay. Tell me more about that. What are adjacent career guides?
So they basically show how the skills you might develop as a paper mill supervisor
Could actually translate to other jobs that you might not think are related?
like, for example, they highlight similarities with an industrial assembly supervisor.
Interesting. So even though the industries are totally different.
The core skills, like leadership, problem solving, all that stuff, is transferable.
Exactly.
It's almost like you're finding these like secret paths in your career.
Yeah, exactly. And it really shows how important it is to have those transferable skills.
Because these days, it's not just about what you've done in the past.
It's about what you're capable of learning and how you can take those skills and use them in new situations.
So for everyone listening out there,
This isn't just about paper mills or even just manufacturing.
it's about really taking a look at what you're good at.
What are you passionate about? And how could those skills be useful in other fields?
Because you never know.
You really don't.
Like what you're good at right now could be the perfect thing for a job that you've never even heard of.
Exactly. And the RoleCatcher Guide really encourages us to do that.
To look for those adjacent career paths.
To connect those dots and realize that our careers don't have to be like this straight line.
It's more like a web, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All these different paths you can take.
And the future of work is changing so quickly.
Oh yeah, constantly.
Just like we talked about with the paper industry.
What seems like a traditional job one day could be totally different a few years from now.
And the skills that you're learning now.
Those are going to be what helps you adapt and stay ahead of the game.
It's all about being open to new opportunities.
Absolutely.
Being willing to learn throughout your career.
Lifelong learning is where it's at.
And realizing that it's okay if your path takes a few detours along the way.
For sure. Sometimes the detours turn out to be the most interesting part.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
We want you to think about,
what are those unexpected connections that might exist for you?
yeah, what are you curious about?
What are those hidden pathways that you'd like to explore?
Take a page from the RoleCatcher Guide.
Challenge your assumptions and see where your skills could take you.
You might be surprised at what you discover.
And that's it for today.
Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
See you next time.